Game 2 of the playoff weekend pairs the Titans versus the Ravens. These are familiar foes. These teams know each other pretty well. They've seen each other this will be the third time they've seen each other in the last pretty much calendar year. And the defining moment for the Baltimore Ravens 2020 season was the playoff game last year against Tennessee. That was the film that allowed teams to go into the offseason and start to think tank how to take apart this Baltimore Ravens offense. There were clues in that game that have been extrapolated upon, and you'll see if you go down below and look at our other videos, you'll see that we came out with Lamar is solved video after Kansas City showed the league exactly how to do this. The things we talk about in that video were then brought up by Louis Riddick in a broadcast after he talked to a defensive coordinator, and that defensive coordinator told him before the game what he was going to do. It had become the template, and Tennessee is where it started. And that's what makes this game much more interesting than it appears on its surface, because the Tennessee defense is terrible. Now, when Vrabel was hired, I laughed. I laughed to myself because I used to joke when Vrabel was playing or coaching for the Texans that Vrabel's idea of defense was guarding the bleachers. His defense is so soft, there's so many gaps and so many issues that it doesn't work versus nearly anything. It doesn't work versus his own offense. It doesn't work versus zone teams, zone running attacks. It doesn't work versus the boot game teams like Minnesota and Cleveland. It doesn't work versus dink and dunk rhythm and timing passers. It doesn't work against nearly anyone except for, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. And that's not to say they're bad quarterbacks. It just has this scheme that just messes with who they are. I thought Vrabel was going to be a failure as a coach when he was hired. I looked at it as another Vance Joseph hire where you're hiring a defensive coordinator whose defense sucks. But then Vrabel hired LaFleur and Dean Pease, and I said, all right, never mind. He'll be fine because those two guys can coach. But as you saw last year, during the middle of the year, you saw the Dean Pease influence come out of the defense. You saw Vrabel's defense coming to the forefront. And when that happened, the Tennessee defense just shattered until one game where they made one alteration that set off a domino effect that truly hurt the Baltimore Ravens. And I don't know if it was intentional to get the effect that it got or if it was unintentional. But what Vrabel did was he dropped the linebackers in his middle deeper. Now, what teams have done since then is pack the triangle. They put a number of bodies in the middle of the field in the triangle region from slot wide receiver to high free safety. They'll put 5, 6 guys in there because all of Baltimore's routes are looking to complete in that region. They have some outs. It's not a big deal. They have some verticals, not a big deal. But that middle region is the bread and butter of the Baltimore offense. Now, Vrabel dropping the linebackers deep actually helped the run game because it made the linebackers have to take a step before they really got to the region that the RPO was trying to pull them out of. So by dropping them deeper, he kept them in that triangle. And that gave them better pursuit angles on the run game. And it helped them actually stifle Baltimore's running game. But it also helped with the passing game for every other team when they saw this. Because the cloud with the 2 safeties and the 1 safety top and then the 2 linebackers at the bottom, you had the 5 guys in the triangle, you packed the middle, and everything rallied towards the outside from there. It just gave you all the angles you were looking for, and this bothered Lamar. Also, Tennessee does a lot of the blitz show bail. And that watching those zone drops out from there made Lamar have to process a little bit more. It slowed him down a little bit. It confused him. And for some reason, Baltimore seems to be one of the few teams that when they have pressure showed by Tennessee, they don't set their protections right. And when they bail out guys, the pass rush is able to get a lot of 1v1 opportunities and get pressure on the quarterback. So even though this Tennessee defense is terrible, not terrible in this matchup. It's going to force Lamar to win this game with his arm. The run defense is going to have the angles they need to keep Baltimore in check. Lamar is going to have to put up a big passing game, and that has been something that's been difficult for him. The last time they played, it was 30-24. Lamar threw for under 200 yards. It's simply going to be a test to see if Baltimore has been able to alter their offense away from teams that are able to pack the middle, and I I haven't seen it to this point, and I don't expect to see it this weekend. On the other side of the ball, Baltimore did something this offseason that put me on the edge of my chair. Because by bringing in Calais Campbell, Derek Wolfe, and getting a defensive line that was more of a pass attacking defensive line, it was very interesting to see how this pressure rate would pop for Baltimore, how much pressure they would be able to generate. And it also concerned me because without the big mean uglies that Baltimore typically puts in the middle of their defense, and as good as Derek Wolfe and Calais Campbell are, that is not their strength, not something like a Mike Pierce is. They open themselves up to being considerably worse against the run. And as this late season has worn on, Baltimore's interior is very beat up. And this is going to be something that helps Tennessee greatly in this game. They are going to need to run right down the throat of Baltimore to keep this offense balanced. Because Baltimore, their blitz game works extremely well against Tennessee, and it gets a lot of pressure. But when you can get Henry rolling on Baltimore and get him rolling downhill, and you attack the fact that Baltimore's added speed and lost strength and lost run stuffing ability in the middle of the field, it doesn't tip in their favor. Baltimore has won a number of games down the stretch. They've played one quality offense, Cleveland, who hung 45 points on them. This is a big physical offensive line. This is a zone blocking team. This is a team that moves the pocket. And Baltimore, despite adding all these pass rushers, has not seen the pressure rate increase. It was a bad twist. It was an idea that would help them against Mahomes, help them against these pass-heavy teams, and it didn't pay off. And that's kind of haunting Baltimore right now. Baltimore's dealt with a lot of injuries. Baltimore's interior defensive line is fairly beat up right now. Calais Campbell's basically on one leg. And the talent that Baltimore has in this franchise, it points in the right direction. Things are going to be good. But the fact that the whole league altered to you from 2019 to 2020, the fact that you lost Staley, the fact that this twist that you've made on defense hasn't played out in your favor, it's really dropped the results. And it's great to say that it dropped the results and you're still 11-5. But of all the teams you could have played in round one, this wasn't the one you wanted. If Baltimore's going to overcome the obstacles that this matchup presents to them, they're going to have to generate a ton of pressure on Tannehill. They're going to have to hold serve on Henry's running game enough so that they can get him in longer down and distances to get that chance to up the pressure. And Lamar's going to have to be as pristine as he's been ever. I haven't seen his elbow height being on kilter for weeks. What you know with Lamar is that when his elbow drops low and he's not throwing the ball 5-7 yards, one of those dart throws that he throws through the line of scrimmage to a short and intermediate, if he tries to throw with a low elbow down the field, that ball frisbees. And it takes air and it lofts and it can go anywhere it wants to go on him. And he doesn't know. So Lamar's going to have his elbow up high. He's going to have to be as strong in his mechanics as he's ever been. He's going to have an answer to what Tennessee has messed him up with in the past. He could throw a lot of empty yards. Last year, he threw for a ton of yards against Tennessee in that game. That's fine. This year, he didn't hit 200. Baltimore doesn't want to get behind and throw the ball around the yard. That they don't want to be chasing. That's not what is conducive to the success that their team is built towards. So while Baltimore is a very talented team, while Baltimore absolutely deserved to push their way back into the playoffs, while Baltimore can take care of a lot of bad teams, this is not the matchup they wanted. And even though Tennessee looked terrible versus Green Bay because Green Bay knows who they are, and Tennessee defensively has looked terrible versus Houston, they've always looked terrible versus Houston. But this is one of those matchups that tips Tennessee with the defensive side of the ball. This is something where they get the efficiency of the other offense down. There are very few matchups for them, so no matter how bad Tennessee looks, understand that this matchup is in their favor. Good luck to the Baltimore Ravens on finding an answer to that. They have been slow to react to the changes defenses have made to combat their offense this year. It's going to take another offseason, I believe, in the think tank, trying to find other solutions to what the league is doing to them. One key solution that you're going to hear me talk about all offseason, if you go down below and hit subscribe and ring that bell, is that Baltimore needs a vertical one. If they can get a healthy Kenny Golladay, that is the guy you need, because that will open up a lot of the space that defenses have taken away from you this year. Best of luck, both teams. Love you guys. We need you. Stay strong, and I'll see you on the other side.